It's afternoon by now, so good afternoon everyone. My name is Alexander van Oudenhoven, that's how you pronounce it with your Dutch, but you don't have to worry about that. I'm an environmental scientist at Leiden University, and as has been introduced extensively some time ago, I've mainly been working with restoring and managing landscapes, and a lot of my partners have actually called them living landscapes, because it's not just nature, it's nature in which people are guests. And people are interacting with nature as well. So a lot of people ask me, if you're an environmental scientist, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you bring a scientist along that works with people? That's the only thing I do. That's me as an environmental scientist. Central in my work is the relation between nature and humans. So what I want to talk to you about is basically seeing the grill as a big ecosystem, a connected ecosystem in which humans are a very, very important factor of it. So if you look at, first of all, what a coastal ecosystem is, it can consist, of course, of a sandy beach, of seagrass, coral reef, mangroves, if you're lucky. And those ecosystems, they provide different services to humans. And they contribute to better human well-being, either in terms of food, in terms of employment, in terms of nutrition. There's quite a lot of things that you can think of if you look at what has nature done for me today. If you look at nature in that way, I think there's quite a long list that you can make. So that's the one side of the story. The other side of the story is that we humans are pretty good at negatively affecting nature. And the principle of my work is basically all these human activities that could potentially or actually interfering with the dynamics and the processes that occur in the coastal ecosystem, in this case, they'll get back to you. What comes around goes around, etc. Because whenever you affect a coastal ecosystem negatively, it will also affect the ecosystem services that are provided by that very system. And remember, as Arjen said, most natural systems provide those services for free. The only thing you need to do is let nature be. As was also introduced, and this is a very, very long abbreviation, but I'm also lead author of a regional assessment of the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. I'm not here to talk to you about that, but it's a huge governmental body approved by 125 countries and counting. The reason why I put this slide in here is because of all the countries in the region, Jamaica has not joined it yet. Don't ask me why. But if the aim of the assessment is to assess the state of biodiversity and ecosystem services, Jamaica has got such unique nature, such a set of unique ecosystem services that really requires protection. So I guess it would be a good step to maybe join the club. I'm here again to talk about integrated approaches. I will illustrate that through two different examples. I'll be quick because people are getting hungry and thirsty as well, so I'll be quick, but I hope it illustrates how you can also look at the Negro ecosystem as a whole. Very different cases, but they've got similarities. They're both affected by or resulting from climate change. And of course, they are different in a way that there are local and national issues at stake and different problems and different solutions and different pushes by local and international and national stakeholders. The sun mode has of course been properly introduced, but what is very important is one of the reasons why this project has been so successful is because there has been a common vision that has been articulated by a set of hundreds of different stakeholders with which we still are in dialogue. The vision was, yes, we need coastal safety, that is a given, but we also want to ensure new recreation opportunities, and we also want to, and that's unfortunately in the Netherlands, we have to create or develop nature because we've messed up pretty much all the nature we had in the country. So one of a very important third pillar of this vision was to develop nature and also to protect it. Again, this vision was developed in intense, open dialogue, but relatively quickly, and that's because of the facilitation of the process. And this dialogue is still ongoing. Our researchers twice a year meet with end users, meet with government officials to report back on their research, to answer questions, to ask questions as well. And it's a fascinating dialogue to be a part of. It also changed the perception of a lot of Dutch people and maybe even scientists as well that a sandy beach is not a coastal desert. The good thing about the sand motor is that before anything happened there, monitoring had already been ongoing, because you want to know what's happening so that you can also forecast what could potentially happen. So I talked about ecosystem services. So what ecosystem services play in this case of the sand motor? First of all, of course, it's coastal protection, which you can look at. Partly it's erosion prevention, but it's also dune formation, and they work at different levels. Erosion prevention, in our case, of course, can we get our Dutch coast to be strengthened? But the dune formation is really a longer process. And it's basically allowing nature to form these dunes through a very intricate process. Recreation, well, you saw it briefly on the video. On a sunny day in the Netherlands, which doesn't happen a lot, we can harbor about, at the moment it's around 130 hectares, there's about 10,000 people visiting. And they have to actually seriously make an effort to get there. There's not really that much public transport there, there's not that much parking spots, it's quite a long drive. A lot of people come there because it's a unique place, it's unique in terms of shape, but also in terms of vegetation, and there's a lagoon, etc. It really attracts people. The issue that you always need to be aware of is that although there was a shared vision, and this shared vision consisted of multiple goals and services that needed to be maintained and created, these services can clash. And of course, the classic clash is between recreation and nature. If you have too many visitors, they could damage the ecosystem. If nature is not being treated well, then maybe some recreation will not show up again, etc. There's this continuous clash, which you will see here, but also in other locations. That's something we're very much aware of and we have to deal with. But the additional result beyond that vision was really more than anyone had ever asked for, luckily. First of all, we give about 200 plus excursions, mostly to foreign visitors. Actually, we want to see what's happening there and how it arose. There is a huge cultural initiative that is artistic initiative that has been just appearing there. We didn't do anything. We didn't do any propaganda to actually tell artists how beautiful it is. They won't fall for that anyway. But and a lot of interaction is happening there. A lot of cultural festivals occur there. It's really quite unique to see that. In addition, and that might sound quite contradicting, it has also resulted in additional drinking water for close by residents. Annually, for 8,000 people, additional water was provided just because of the beach service is actually increasing. I won't go into detail that, but it's all quite fascinating as well. And I said before, the key factors for the success was that this design was co-designed as a collaboration between scientists, but also private and public partners and local people living around there. The second case study is really going, I call it back to the roots, because first of all it deals with mangrove roots, but also it deals with solutions that used to be very common in the 1960s and 70s when people still listened to nature. The case in Indonesia, the northern part of Java, has faced in the last 10 to 15 years erosion of 1 kilometer. There's not that much high waves, even lower than here even. It's just basically land is crumbling at a rapid pace. Sometimes 100, 200 meters in 1 year. People are literally losing their land. You can look at it from two different perspectives. As a scientist, of course, you've got your conclusions set. You can pretty much see what's happening. But it's also about discovering what is the perceived problem by local inhabitants who are actually losing their land. The scientists are not losing their land; they're just visiting and analyzing the problem. I was involved in the predecessor of the big case study. It involved lots and lots of talking and listening to people and drinking very, very sweet tea. I'm the tall guy there on the picture. And listening for weeks and weeks and weeks. First of all, because it helps you to understand what motivates the people, but also it helps you to find out information that through any other method you will never really be able to obtain. So what was the problem? Of course, large-scale aquaculture ponds that started to crumble very quickly. but the issue is wherever there's aquaculture, there's usually mangrove vegetation that has been removed. So basically all the vegetation that used to be there had been completely swept away. And then people suddenly started to become worried about their coastal safety because they started losing land, losing their property, losing infrastructure, the limited infrastructure that was there, and also losing lives. And at the same time, people were also managing those aquaculture ponds that just kept literally dying on them due to diseases, due to over usage of inputs like pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers, etc. So a vision was developed through a huge, impressive partnership of so national ministries, but also local and district government, which is very crucial here because they sometimes can clash it and can even overrule each other, which I found here in another case study. And then other partners as well, including local universities who helped a lot with monitoring and measuring. So what was basically done here to get the land back was to look at what mangroves do. What do they do again? If you look at the roots, it is a permeable structure. Water can go through, and it leaves its sediment, and then it leaves again. That's basically how mangroves, if you look at aerial photographs of intact mangrove forest, you see it's moving, it's constantly on the move. And it's basically because they capture sediment. So what was done here was exactly what was done in the 1950s and 60s in different areas in Indonesia, to build permeable structures just of wood, nothing fancy, just wood, put it there, and it allowed the water to flow through, to deposit the sediment, and then to flow out again. That's all. And it resulted in accretion of land of about, let's say in the last year, the area already grew by about 150 meters locally to sometimes 200 meters. The other issue that are now working on, now they've got some land back, is changing the way how they manage their aquaculture ponds. And again, they're making use of these fantastic properties of the mangrove trees. And as you can see here, the ponds are partly already there. So you can do two things. You can completely sweep them away, or you can integrate them with mangroves. Because a lot of people, especially if you listen to the local grandpas, which is what I did a lot. I didn't understand them, but I had my interpreters for that. You see, they will say wherever there were mangroves, there were fish, there were shrimp, there were lobsters, there was everything. So they're now working towards this hybrid, this integration between aquaculture and between vegetation. Why? Because mangroves not only prevent erosion, but they enhance fisheries, they purify the water, they provide fuel wood because they grow actually faster because of the water that they're purifying, and they sequester an enormous amount of carbon as well, which helps in climate change mitigation. If you think of what these different elements of nature and nature as a whole does to you, that's what I basically define as a systems understanding of your own coast. So let's go to your own coast. You've seen this picture before again. Basically what you see here, and especially the second picture is interesting to me. What you see here is 4 different lines of defense. You've got the coral reefs, you've got the seagrass, you've got the beach, but you also have got the dunes. Dunes which, if you walk around, now there's only one place where you can still see them, and that's in front of your house. And I will get back to that. So if you look at Negril as an ecosystem, rather than just a stretch of beach, you can see that it exists of many sub-parts or sub-ecosystems. If you're lucky, you'll find some dunes. There used to be a palm tree line there, which you will saw in those previous pictures. There's the sandy beach, and you walk into the water and start swimming. There's the seagrass, coral reefs. If you go left, you head for the river and some mangroves. And if you're lucky, you might be able to reach the morass. All these systems are connected and will always be. Even how hard we try to disconnect them by building roads, etc. There's always a connection. So whatever you do to any of these subsystems will affect the other system. So when you look at the beach, first of all, we're still standing on the beach. The ideal vision for the beach would be, of course, it should be wide enough. It should have nice white sand, clean water, etc. This depends, of course, on sand movement, on reducing storm impacts, but it has also been very, very strongly affected by encroachment of course, the buildings that we've been building. This the intended line of not building too closely on the beach or towards the beach is there for a reason, and that's why you see dunes developing in front of your house and not in front of other buildings that are basically neglecting the 150 feet line above high water. But the beach, the sand that is there also depends on seagrass and on coral if it would be there in large quantities. And it also depends on seepage of fresh water that is now actually it is assumed at least that due to increasing pressure of all the buildings that are being constructed here, that a lot of fresh water is actually seeping into the sea. And of course, pollutants, there's a lot of waste lying about there, there's a lot of let's say, informal sewage plants here and there, to put it mildly. And these are all affecting not only the quality of the water, but also the experience of people venturing on the beach. And you can see that on the picture that just Arjen showed it before again, that we are basically squeezed in between the sea on the one hand, on the morass on the other hand. So it's, if you would see so, a double coastal squeeze in a way. There were some pictures I recently took. You can see the algae on the northern part of the bay here. You see, in my view, unexplicable pipes poking out of the beach, and then there's this oasis with actual dunes and undergrowth, and probably a coastline that has never really been in any trouble, just because of that you respect the fact that the sea needs room to breathe and room to move. It's still there. There's still an example there. But also when I think of ecosystem service, I also think of what humans want, what humans would like, and I think in the case of Negril that's quite realistic because there's a lot of tourists visiting this place. Some want to engage in water sports and activities. Some want to, of course, engage in activities that have absolutely nothing to do with the beach. So you could think of, what you as Negril offer and decide to offer, it will attract certain types of tourists. That is something you can consider. I'll come back to it in my last slide. If we walk further into the beach and start swimming, you see the seagrass and coral reef, which, as Tom already explained, are highly connected. Of course, ideally, we want to have growing, healthy corals, growing in size, growing in surface, because it will increase fish abundance, it will increase opportunities for fishing, diving, snorkeling, glass boat, etc., if it is properly managed. And coral reefs reduce wave energy and impacts from storms and retain sand into the actual bay system. There will be a workshop next week, actually, to which we've also been invited, but we're not able to come. So if you want to learn and speak more about coral reefs, then there's this workshop next week. This is a picture that's maybe difficult for you to see, but it shows on top the difference between a healthy and a degraded coral reef. It's a picture that was published in Monga Bay 2014. And if you look very carefully, the main difference is, of course, the energy of waves actually reaching the beach. And that's what I want to emphasize here. Of course, the abundance of fish, but I think almost everybody here knows that. It's an important goal that coral reefs have. They dissipate wave energy. And with that, as Tom already illustrated with the hand clapping, you actually need to allow water to flow through in order to reduce its energy, rather than to stop it right away, so it will actually start escalating, literally escalating. But there's not that much left, as most of you know, and whatever is left, the certain parts I've been able to see and I've been able to read about, and is in quite a bad state due to algal growth, etc., which has a lot to do with water quality flowing out of the river. But there's seagrass as well, and seagrass might be a bit underestimated by a lot of people. But they not only retain sand, they also produce sand. And in certain ecosystems that you look at, 30% of the sand that's there has been produced by organisms living on seagrass and then dying for us. This is a super magnified sand that actually is lying on your beach now. From the left to the right is 25 millimeters, so that's how far it's been magnified. So the seagrass organisms actually retain sand, but then again they also stabilize the beach and reduce even more wave energy coming through after the corals. And what is again very important to realize is there's a connection between mangroves, the shallow seabed, the river, and the morass. So if you look into those additional features of the Negril ecosystem, in which we are still a guest, we've been fortunate enough and brave enough to actually go up onto the river, which looks beautiful. You have to look for certain places that look beautiful, but there are beautiful places, and it opened the eyes of some people that were on our boat who had never really been here before. And these plants really defy any, well, not really logic, but environmental conditions, because these are really hardy plants. They can really withstand quite high pressures. The water quality wasn't so great, partly due to sewage water running into the water, which you could see, floating plastics, etc. But if this were to be connected with the morass, which has even more water purifying capacities, then this could actually be a beautiful ecosystem. And then we come to the morass. The morass, in a good state, does by far the most of all the other ecosystems that have been built. It not only purifies water, it retains water. So after long, intensive periods of rain, the water actually stays there rather than running off with taking lots of waste with it. So it prevents runoff, it prevents flooding, it sequesters incredible amounts of carbon, and it provides a habitat for species that you will find nowhere else in Jamaica or even in the larger region. And I think most people will agree with me, it's actually quite beautiful, so there could be opportunities for tourism there, albeit on a limited scale. Other things I don't have time for you to talk to you about now is that what is very important is that this interconnection that I talked about. For instance, if you find a snapper on your menu, then you have to realize that at some point of its life it has been either in the seagrass or in the mangroves or in the coral reefs. So if you take away either the seagrass or the mangroves or the coral reefs, you take away basically the nursery function for a lot of animals. Water purification is something that I could go on and on about. Carbon sequestration is an interesting. Even seagrasses sequester incredible amounts of carbon, about 500 tons per hectare, which can be compared to, let's say, half a hectare of rainforest. It's about 10,000 individuals return flights to Miami. That's about 1 hectare of seagrass, which means if you take that 1 hectare of seagrass away, because it's slippery and green and yuck, you emit incredible amounts of CO2 every single time. And it comes back, but only it is being emitted in an instant, and it comes back only after years and years. The additional finding that I also learned through my experience in Indonesia, but also in the sand motor, and I think it could also work here, is you want to connect the people that live here, that depend on this area, with what is actually happening in the different ecosystems, and how do these ecosystems function, what do they do with us. So I think there's a huge role and a huge opportunity for education through excursions, through school programs, etc. Plus restoration equals employment as well. I think in addition, just like we did in Indonesia before, I think it's crucial to ask the people what motivates them. Ask the people that are visiting the grill, is this beach enough? Is the type of people that are currently visiting the grill, do they only come for the beach, or do they also come for corals? What activities are preferred? Just imagine what would change if you would go from this 10% reef that is currently remaining in not such a good state. What if we actually regrow it, and what the opportunities would be for tourism, but also for all the other services that I listed. Would I be interested in wetlands experience? Might people actually be able to pay for it or willing to pay for it? There could be an interesting link connecting visitors to ongoing restoration of the Negril ecosystem. I think a lot of people are actually interested in good news. If you give them ongoing good news occurring in this green Negril area, it could be interesting. You might actually be able to see more turtles, and people might actually feel connected through whatever additional amount of money they are willing to pay, that they're bringing dory back, or the turtle, or flamingos, or sharks, or dolphins, depending on which animals they like. And it might also attract a new kind of tourist, maybe one that drinks not as much as most tourists are here now. But if you look at it from a broad point of view, there are so many different benefits on different skills that could be provided to people. And another very important question is that you have to ask the people of Negril, of course. What tours do we want? How many? What activities should be allowed or not? What can we provide? What should we perhaps stop if we want to save this precious ecosystem? If it is long-term sustainable tourism that we want, then we know what to do, I guess. Because we could be interested in alternative incomes as well. But it's very important, if you look towards the solutions, what do we want our ecosystem to look like? And what do we want it to do? Because whatever you decide on doing, whatever smaller or bigger step you take will affect a certain part of the ecosystem. And I think it's very important, again, as Arjen also emphasized, let's agree on the problem, on recognizing the problems before we think of solutions. So there's a suite of options, and actually there's a lot of literature, a lot of reports that you can read through that already applies this. These are just a few, and there are dozens more. But what's very important is if you do this in isolation, it will only tackle one part of the problem, and it might even affect another area negatively. So it's very important to look at the suite of options and execute. First of all, I spoke about giving the beach the space it needs, and that's mainly related to building. Seagrass conservation and restoration. Again, I reminded you of the carbon sequestration issues that could be quite important. Coral reef restoration has been fantastically described. Improving the water quality, re-wetting the morass, which is currently emitting tons and tons and tons of CO2 every day, especially when it burns, and these fires will intensify if it goes on like this. Prevent more drainage, actually re-wetting is really the word we're looking at. And reconnect the coast, the sea, the river, and the moors in a way that you actually have this integrated ecosystem. And additionally, those ecosystem reserves that I've been talking about could be very, very important in the light of climate adaptations. There's a lot of carbon credit funds that are out there, but also for restoring biodiversity. And I think a lot of tourists would actually pay the additional $1 just to come back next year and find the ecosystem to be even more beautiful than it was. So really, what comes around goes around, etc. So before I give Arjen the word back for just a few more minutes to really reflect on what should be done on the shorter term, I think it's very important to realize that all these solutions that are there, and that I think most of you actually know about, in isolation could do good here, but they might do wrong there, and they might harm another area there. And so whatever you think of doing here might actually affect somebody positively or negatively. All these different areas are interconnected. Some could be connected in more strongly, but they are interconnected. And the consequences, especially if you don't understand the full problem yet, could be quite devastating. And very importantly, nature does work for you. If you give it space, if you give it time, if you create the boundary conditions that these ecosystems will actually need. And negro and nature can be a very happy marriage. It can be providing income, employment, and hopefully it can become a very inspiring example for other areas in Jamaica and throughout the entire region. And let me just give the floor back to Arjen for a few more minutes before wrapping. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we have been asked to think about some future steps. Of course, we're guests here. We share our ideas and knowledge. But we thought about some next steps that potentially could help to make progress. Right? Whatever the future will bring us, we believe, from let's say the different disciplines, that we have to develop a monitoring plan as soon as possible. Because the present data that is out there is scattered, it's not integrated. So now is the time. Right? Let's not keep on talking for another 3 years, because then at some point we realize, okay, we should have been measuring 3 years ago. Understand your system, whatever solution will be developed. If you have all the data available, you can develop or make an integrated system understanding. Not only from a physical point of view, but also from an ecosystem services point of view. Interrelate those elements. And of course, the stakeholders of the drill are crucial in that step. And from there, you can develop a vision for this 7-mile beach. Before you start, let's say, thinking about solutions and come up with conceptual designs and EIA studies, and etc., etc. So, that is actually the message that we want to leave behind, both from Alexander and myself. Think about a monitoring plan. Somehow get organized and make frequent shoreline surveys. It's not difficult. Just take a GPS every week and just walk along the beach. Does that work? Yes, it does work. Just walk along the beach with a GPS. Do regular echo soundings. The reason for that is that you know where the sand is going to, or has been transported after wave events, after storm events. You want to trace actually where the sand goes, because that gains or provides you understanding of the system. Same goes for the wave buoys, wind. I've been out there for just a month, never longer than that. And of course, if you interrelate, connect these elements, like Sander highlighted, you have to start also thinking about water quality issues. Start in a morass, then in the river, then go to the coastal waters. Same holds for the sediment sand. And again, so we're repeating, but sometimes that's also good. Nature does work for you. Give it space and time. And I think the grill and nature can be a happy marriage. Thanks.